Warning, this video features gameplay footage that contains flashing lights. Please be aware if you are sensitive to these effects. In 1995, on-rail shooters were starting to see an explosion in popularity among arcade goers. Namco expanded the genre by adding a new immersive duck and cover element, a timer to keep players on their toes, and a cinematic action movie storyline to raise the stakes.
My name is Gerudo. I rule this nation now.
What's up, agents? I am Steve, and this is Arcade Economy, the series where we take a look at arcade classics to determine just how much they cost to beat during the time of their release. Last time on Arcade Economy, we took on Skynet in the future war in Terminator Salvation. Today, we're stepping on those foot pedals to rescue the president's daughter in Time Crisis. Did this cover shooter provide a fair test of your reflexes, or was the stress of that ticking clock too much for your wallet? It's time to find out.
There's been a kidnapping. It's Rachel, the daughter of the president of Sertia. Get into the castle and rescue Rachel.
Sometime, somewhere, someone is plotting a government overthrow. A small republic is in danger. It's time for the one-man army. Richard Miller. She must be dead by now.
Don't come!
Rachel McPherson.
Since you have traveled so very far, be my guest and let me entertain you.
Gerudo Gatto. Just to be sure. Wild Dog. Time Crisis.
Let's jump back to 1995. Sega was coming off of their success with Virtua Cop, the first fully 3D polygon light gun game. This launched the arcade rail shooter boom, and a ton of other studios would follow suit throughout the mid to late 90s. Namco would become just as crucial a player in the genre's popularity as Sega, but in order to do that, they needed a game that could compete. So Namco put their internal team to work under the production of arcade veteran Kazunori Sawano. The team used the new System Super 22 arcade board to pump out high-quality 3D environments. However, a straight-up Virtua Cop clone wasn't going to cut it. Sure, Virtua Cop had made the huge technical leap forward with better graphics and physics, but gameplay-wise, it wasn't much different than other light gun shooters we had seen before. For their game to stick out, Namco needed something different, something to get arcade goers to really step foot in front of their machine. And so, the action pedal was born. This added a new dimension to the game, allowing players to duck and cover between shots and defend against waves of enemies. Now, right around this time, Namco had partnered with Sony to co-develop the System 11 arcade board, which was essentially the hardware that powered the original PlayStation. It was a big success for games like Tekken. The Sony-Namco partnership makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. Namco partnered with Sony to help the launch of the original PlayStation, a direct competitor to the Sega Saturn. Namco was already taking on Sega in the arcades as the fight for 3D polygon games was heating up. Namco released Ridge Racer, Sega followed up with Daytona USA. Sega had Virtua Fighter, and Namco answered with Tekken. So when Sega redefined the light gun genre with Virtua Cop, you bet that Namco was ready to fire back with something bigger. And with Namco exclusively releasing most of their games on the PlayStation, it also gave Sony even more firepower to take on the Saturn. Time Crisis launched in the arcades in late 1995 to mostly favorable reviews, with many critics citing the innovative foot pedal as the reason for the game's success. Time Crisis was ported to the PlayStation and bundled with the Gun-Con peripheral. However, the game's frame rate had to be cut in half and the number of polygons used had to be reduced in order for the game to run on the system. For the port, Namco decided to release an entirely new exclusive game mode called Special Mission. It fleshed out the plot a little bit, giving console owners a reason to buy the game even if they had already burned through their allowance playing the arcade version. The franchise would go on to release a number of arcade sequels and spin-offs. Time Crisis 2 released in 1997, Crisis Zone, a spin-off, released in 1999, 2001 saw the release of Time Crisis Project Titan, a PlayStation exclusive sequel. The series would head back to the arcade with Time Crisis 3 in 2002, Time Crisis 4 in 2006, spin-off Raising Storm in 2009, and Time Crisis 5 in 2015. The franchise also saw 2 mobile releases with Time Crisis Strike and Time Crisis Second Strike. The story for Time Crisis is similar to the plot of a cheesy 90s action movie and is set up by the game's Attract mode. You step into the boots of Richard Miller, an operative for the VSSE. That's the Vital Situation Swift Elimination Organization. Try saying that 5 times fast. Miller is sent on a high-stakes, one-man army mission to the remote island nation of Circia. He must infiltrate the stronghold of the ruthless Sharudo Garo. Garo has orchestrated a military coup and kidnapped Rachel McPherson, the daughter of the president of Circia. Miller must stop Garo and save Rachel before Garo seizes control of the government and turns the country into a military dictatorship. Along the way, you're forced to contend with Garo's right-hand mercenary, Wild Dog.
Both you and this stinking castle can burn for all I care.
He seems like a nice fella. I do want to note that the voice acting in this game is actually pretty good for its time, and if you don't believe me, then take a look at games like Virtua Cop or House of the Dead.
Oh no!
The game also does a really good job of setting up the story. The narrative of most arcade games is usually limited to either a few lines of dialogue or on-screen text, so you can see that Namco went the extra mile here to really try to deliver a cinematic experience. Also, I'm not sure if this game started the President's Daughter is Kidnapped trope, but Sega would go on to use the same plot device a year later in Die Hard Arcade, and then probably the most famous use would come a decade after from Capcom in Resident Evil 4. The game itself is single-player only, kind of a rarity for arcade games in 1995. Upon entering your coins, you'll get the option to pick between story game or timed game. In story game, you'll play the 3 stages in a linear fashion and get 3 lives, which basically means you can get shot up to 3 times before having to continue. Time Crisis is well known for its innovative cover system, which sets it apart from other rail shooters of the time. Richard will only step out from behind cover when the player steps down on the foot pedal. Releasing the foot pedal will see you go back into cover to avoid enemy fire and reload your weapon. Each stage has 3 areas and a boss battle, and each area will start off with a 1-minute timer, which, if you haven't put it together by now, is where the game's title comes from. Areas are filled with a number of gunfights in which you must defeat groups of enemies in order to advance. Time is extended with each group of enemies you defeat. You can also get time extensions from optional harder-to-hit enemies. Be on the lookout for a number of environmental hazards that you must avoid by ducking back into cover. If a player loses all of their lives or their time runs out, they will be able to enter more coins to continue, starting the player off with 3 more lives and resetting the 1-minute timer. Enemies vary and will get progressively harder as you advance through the stages. They'll start off by exchanging gunfire, but it's not long before you're going up against enemies with grenades, rocket launchers, or machine guns. You'll also have to take on helicopters and, I don't know, I think these guys are like cyber ninjas or something. When playing a timed game, players get to choose which stage they want to play and will receive unlimited lives. But when the timer runs out, you don't get to continue. It's basically a challenge to see how far you can get before the time's up. There are 3 boss battles in the game: Maz, Sharudo Garo, and Wild Dog. Maz is a ninja assassin with a giant claw. He also brings a bunch of his friends along with him for the fight. I tried taking his henchmen out first and then aggressively attacked him the moment I saw him come back on screen. The second boss fight is against Sharudo Garo. And while he is the primary antagonist of the story, he's not the final boss of the game. Sharudo has no problem bringing his knives to a gunfight. He's a lot trickier than Maz, and he'll pop out quickly to throw a couple of his knives at you before ducking behind cover again. In between these sequences, he'll order a group of his goons to attack you, and you'll have to dispose of them first in order to progress the fight. The best way to deal with Sharudo is to release your foot from the pedal immediately after you land a shot on him. If you don't, chances are you're going to take some damage from his knives. The final boss is Wild Dog. You'll have a tense cinematic standoff with him just before he lets Rachel go, only to take aim at her. Luckily, his bullet only grazes her, but that doesn't stop her from being super dramatic about it. This is a lengthy boss fight that kind of feels like it goes on forever. In his first phase, you'll fight him around a water fountain. Really just gotta have quick reflexes to shoot him when he pops up here. In his second phase, he'll call on a bunch of henchmen. The game will mix in just about every enemy type here. Try to take them out as the game throws them at you. Wild Dog will also take his shots as well, and that's when you have to focus fire on him. His third and final phase will see Wild Dog fight you from behind a wall of flames, limiting your visibility. Use your best judgment to shoot him, but watch out for his grenades in close quarter combat. Once you land enough shots on him, Wild Dog will drop his detonator, blowing himself up. Richard will save Rachel and escape the destructing castle via helicopter as they fly off into the sunset. Time Crisis received a ton of praise upon its release for its innovative new gameplay mechanics, and it's generally considered to be the better of the two when comparing it to Virtua Cop. However, it is not without its flaws. The game is a single-player only game in a time where two-player games were the norm. If I had to guess, I'm assuming it stuck with the solo route because of the duck and cover mechanic. Kinda hard to do this with two players on the same screen. I think it's also worth noting that there are no weapon or health pickups throughout the game, and while I don't dislike the timer, you do have to wait sometimes for enemy animations to finish before you can start shooting, putting this completely out of the player's control. And now it's time for us to calculate how much I spent to beat Time Crisis. Now for these games, I play them on their default settings and I set up a counter to increase every time I start or continue. For Time Crisis, this game defaulted to 75 cents, which is a first here on Arcade Economy. Now, obviously each arcade was different, so your arcade might have charged 25 cents, probably not, or 50 cents, which is probably more likely, but this game did default to 75 cents, so that is what I am going off of here. When it was all said and done, it took me $13.50 or 18 plays to beat Time Crisis on 75 cents. Adjusted for inflation and spending $13.50 in 1995 would feel like spending $29.47 today. If I were playing with 50-cent plays, then this would have cost $9, and adjusting that for inflation in 1995 would feel like spending $19.65 today. It took me just about 28 minutes to beat Time Crisis, bringing my cost per minute to 48 cents. This is mostly due to the 75-cent price tag, and just because some of you asked for it, adjusted for inflation, this would feel like spending $1.05 per minute today. For the bosses, I spent 75 cents or 1 continue on Maz, $1.50 or 2 continues on Shirudo Garo, and $3 or 4 continues on Wild Dog, bringing my boss total to $5.25. And now it's time to bust out the Predatory game scale to determine just how fair Time Crisis was when it came to taking your money. Now, I think Time Crisis does have some predatory practices, starting with the price tag. Now, price certainly isn't everything here, but I do want to compare a few prices before we move on. So for one, let's take a look at Virtua Cop. That game came out a year before Time Crisis, and it defaulted to 25 cents compared to Time Crisis's 75 cents. While I did spend more continues on Virtua Cop, my cost there was almost half of what I spent on Time Crisis, simply because of the barrier to entry. And then there's Terminator Salvation, a game that we just did and that cost a full $1 to play, and adjusted for inflation, Terminator Salvation actually cost less than Time Crisis. The gameplay for Time Crisis is incredibly fun, and the foot pedal is surprisingly intuitive. I do have to give it to the Namco team here. They did a great job of thinking outside of the box for this one. The presentation for the game is also really well done, especially for its time. Now, there are a few things that get me caught up on Time Crisis, starting with the countdown timer, and I get it. You need this mechanic because otherwise someone could just sit in cover and hog up the machine for an hour. But the fact that multiple times during my playthrough, I would watch time diminish while I waited for animations to finish really bothered me because it was something I really didn't have much control over. And then the other thing is the lack of pickups. No health, no gun pickups, that does push it up the scale a little bit for me. The learning curve here is very similar to any other shooter. The more you play, the more you'll understand your enemies and how they're going to attack, and you'll be able to predict them later. I also do like the fact that the game gives you a timed option, letting you play the game with only a focus on time and not having to worry about lives. This is also a great way to practice for the game. So where are we going to put this? I do think that Time Crisis does have some predatory practices, but I also think it makes up for a lot of those in other options and other ways in the game. So I'm going to give Time Crisis a 6 out of 10 on the Predatory game scale.
Action!
Do you agree or disagree with my rating? Please sound off in the comments below to let me know. Now, can you play Time Crisis today? Yes, actually, you can. There is a company called Game that released light guns with a foot pedal with Time Crisis, and it is upgraded to work on current TVs. I will leave a link in my description if you are interested. This company is in no way, shape, or form affiliated with me. This is not an affiliate link. Next time on Arcade Economy, we're heading to the Big Apple to play through Marvel's very first arcade beat-em-up, Spider-Man the arcade game. So be sure to come back for that one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, I love doing these light gun games, and Time Crisis was a game that I often saw in the arcades, but I never really played on my own. So this was the first time that I actually spent this much time with it and played through it. I am looking forward to playing some other Time Crisis games in the future. I'm sure I'll cover 2, maybe 3 somewhere down the line. But anyway, before I get out of here, huge shout out to our Patreon and YouTube producers. You guys know who you are. Jake Weed, Tanner Trezza, Pezmage, John Forhan, Smash Jackson, Gregory Hines, The Badger Knight, and Tupalev. If you would like to support the channel, you can become a YouTube member or a patron on Patreon. At the producer level, you'll get your name shouted out at the end of all of my videos. At the VIP viewer level and higher, you'll get all of my videos early and ad-free, plus a director's cut of Arcade Economy with more footage around the game's history. And you'll also get an extra video from me every month. And every member will get access to my Arcade Economy live streams, where I live stream for the footage for these videos. Anyway, sound off in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know what you thought of Time Crisis. Let me know what you want to see me do next, and I will do my best to reply. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, it really helps me, and I would appreciate it. And hopefully, you'll see me on my next video. Thank you guys for watching.
Richard, there's an emergency. There's been a kidnapping. It's Rachel, the daughter of the president of Sertia. The kidnapper is believed to be Sharudo, the last blood relative of the royal family. He lives in an old castle on the Northwest Island. He's demanding military secrets in exchange for Rachel's life. The deadline is sunset. We don't have much time. Get into the castle and rescue Rachel. The organized crime syndicate Wild Dogs is also known to be involved. Good luck, Richard.